Welcome everyone. It's 9:32 on my watch, so we can start. So let me introduce myself. My name is Bartosz Piechowicz from Microfinance Center, and I'm very happy to welcome you at our EaSI Technical Assistance Project webinar from the series Business Continuity Planning. This is the second webinar in that series. At the very beginning, I will just say a few words about the program it's being organized under. This is the EaSI Technical Assistance Program, implemented fully by European Commission. The program is being implemented by the consortium of organizations, which is Frankfurt School of Finance and Management, Microfinance Center, European Microfinance Network. Second standard is being implemented by Microfinance Rating for offering ratings and evaluation services of the benefiting institutions in Europe. This is a complex program. The webinar is just a part of the activities under this program. One of the there are a lot of parts of support and types of activities also in financial instruments available for microfinance institutions and microcredit providers. Our part, the technical assistance, consists of a number of services offered to on a different level. So these are for selected beneficiaries, those who have gone through the call of expression of interest launched by the European Commission, receive free of charge technical assistance consisting of training courses and technical assistance always tailored to the needs of the particular institution. For those microcredit providers that have signed up to the European Code of Good Conduct, we're offering trainings on the implementation of the code and how to prepare an institution to go through the evaluation process. And for wider European microcredit sector, we are offering different types of dissemination of microfinance good practices. These may be microfinance webinars and workshops, P2P training, study visits, or a help desk. The current round of the projects started in July 2018 and ends in this July. So after that date, we expect another round for another 4 years to be open. To find out more about the EaSI Technical Assistance Program, please visit the dedicated website or contact the program team directly by writing to the email addresses visible on the screen right now. Briefly about the upcoming webinars with the Microfinance Center. This is the third part of this series. Will take place on Wednesday, 13th of April, the same time as today, 9:30 till 10:30 Central European Time. And we are also preparing a webinar on the case study of ABA Center and Vet Invest in Albania that will take place on Wednesday, April the 6th. Those of you who are still not our members, I encourage you to visit our website and read about the benefits for the membership in microfinance centers. There are a lot of interesting benefits you can get by signing into our network. The rules of the webinar, as all of our webinars, this one is also being recorded. The video will be available on Microfinance website as well as on EaSI dedicated YouTube channel. To ask questions, to comment, please use the raise hand button or type the question in the chat box. Please remember to properly address the question in the chat. I do not recommend using the Q&A section, which is difficult to notice for the panelists, and it's often seems that we do not notice that there's a question over there. So just please use the chat box if you want to write the question. And finally, let me introduce our expert today, Artan Kochi, a very experienced risk management specialist. Artan is from Albania, as he has over 15 years of experience in risk management and consulting for largest Albanian banks and a lot of microfinance institutions from the microfinance sector as well. Welcome, Artan. Can you hear me?
Yes, good morning. Good morning. Thank you for having me today in these difficult times, actually. Yes. It's a pleasure to be again with you here today.
Well, thank you for accepting the invitation to this webinar. Thank you for the previous parts, and I'm just passing the voice to you. The floor is yours right now, so you can share your presentation and start the webinar, because there's a lot of interesting things you're going to share with us. So I'm not wasting the time anymore. So go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Let me check. Okay. So in this series of webinars, actually we're in very difficult situation, especially from this war that is happening in Ukraine, and it's a tragedy what is going on. But as you know, everybody keep doing their business and lives, and so we continue with our work even in these difficult periods. What we are going to discuss in here is for the building and the development of capacities for the business continuity planning. As discussed previously in the first webinar, we focused for the risk assessment, where we identified and did the assessment for the threats or events that could disrupt the business activities. And then we discuss all the effects possible, all the impacts that these disruptions have on the business functions or processes. During this second webinar, we are going to discuss for the recovery strategies and plan development. So in order to reflect all the results and all the requirements that were provided during the business impact analysis, we're going to develop certain options and solutions. Also, for the plan development, we're going to discuss the crisis management plan, business continuity plans, and possibly information technology disaster recovery plans. These are steps that for the best practices are usually used in the business continuity program. As discussed even previously, what is very essential in this kind of approach that we're having for the business continuity was the leadership and the technical organization structure that we need to put within our institutions, especially for the financial institutions, in order to develop and to support the business continuity responsibilities and accountability. So you need to put up all the policies and procedure that support the roles and responsibilities and the maintenance of recovery strategies, and also the overall risk management program. So starting with the recovery strategies, they do identify all the tactical and strategic solutions to enable the organization, financial institution, in order to meet its recovery objectives established during the business continuity analysis and based to the worst case scenarios. So recovery strategies are alternate means to restore business operations, possibly with the minimum acceptable level of operations, follow a certain disruption or threat or events that have a huge impact. And they are prioritized by the recovery time objective during the phases of analysis. Strategies require resources, which include people, facilities, equipment, information technology, and the analysis of this strategy will determine the cost needed to provide and to implement all the necessary steps for this solution that were approved by the management and, for example, board of directors. Also, they're going to be included the risk reductions that were provided from these options approved. We're going to focus on how we could develop certain strategies, certain solutions. You come up with the first approach that you need to collect all the evidences and all the results coming from the previous analysis phases. So you put all your criticality of business processes and you categorize this into scales according to the maximum allowable downtime. For example, for the first 2 up to 4 hours, which might be the critical part of the activities, and more than 1 week. So for each priority scale, you identify the minimum resources, which are included people, work computers, working place, telephones, whatever needed to keep up the actual processes. Then then the most important part is to identify gaps for the current recovery strategies that the institution might have in place in relation to loss of people, buildings, loss of IT scenarios, and with the new changes in the regulatory part or also in the business activity. And then you decide to put options or different strategy for each of the worst case scenarios. You gather a lot of people in groups, or you put workshops or questionnaires and whatever needed to have a collaboration with all the units of the institution, and then you decide to put a layer for each of the business processes. You need to have the staff with in-depth knowledge of the overall business functions and processes, and they decide what is appropriate for these options, what might work and what might be needed. Also, usually for the strategies, you might involve even contracting third parties, entering into partnerships, or providing just simple solutions, displacing other activities within the company. To have a performance which might be efficient for the strategies from a perspective of cost analysis, cost benefit analysis, you already have to identify all the resources required. You need to assess the procurement costs for these sources and to assess their activity effectiveness for meeting the recovery objectives. So you find out if the costs that need to implement these strategies are worth doing the investments, or just doing nothing, or bearing the cost from the disruption. And so the most efficient and effective strategies are presented for approval to the management or the board of directors. Also, what is important during the development of the strategies is to plan for funding and liquidities, usually for the staff or also for the institution. So you need to keep an open mind for the short and also the long term of the business activity. And it is important for certain financial institutions to open, for example, agreements or credit lines with banks in order to have the facilities and the liquidity available if a certain non-financial disruptions might happen to these institutions. The elements that you put into your strategy document should be very detailed, and you start with specifying what other locations do I have. Certainly for parts of disruptions, kind of earthquake, a fire disruption, or even as we experience pandemic, you should consider all the possible locations that you have as a business, and then the units and the staff that you need to uh, perform the critical functions that you already listed in the business impact analysis, and who will be contactable, who will be needed during the emergency. Then you need to list all these processes and the units ranked by the priority in recovery. So this should be the first steps in the recovery strategy documents. Then you need to focus for certain processes, for certain stuff. What are the resources needed? Consider just the minimum amounts needed for office spaces, computers, operating system, telephones, database, whatever is needed. So then you specify as per the solutions that we will provide for each strategy, what equipment is available at each alternate site, existing alternate site, and what are the requirements that I should include, I should buy, or provide from other sources. So then you specify workflow for duties and the groups or teams created before and after disruption. These solutions should have accurate assessed plans to ensure that the right people have the facility and have the capability to enter to the appropriate or the right areas. For example, the data center, if I have the access of certain IT members to enter the data center, where are the servers, at any time without any obstruction, this is highly appropriate, and I need the right person at the right areas at the right time. So another steps that should be included is to provide media press statement, previously concepted and then implemented in certain templates. If I have a disruption for the IT system, if I have negative articles in the media or anything else, I might consider to have certain types of solutions for the statements I will give to the press, and also will design a certain person or spokesperson. Usually it's for marketing or any other department, especially for the financial institutions. As discussed in the business impact analysis, we provided this template where you have the minimum resources required for each of the RTOs of the processes and the functions. So I need, for example, for certain units or for certain types of scenarios that I'm implemented, I need 10 people from 3 departments of 5 units. I need workplaces, I need applications, I need the servers to be live, and all the communication channels regarding emails or mobile phones, anything else. So with these resources in mind, we're going to discuss also the possible solutions. Which do you consider when you do the possible alternatives that you provide, especially focus in mind different types of consideration. Usually it's the safe separation distance. In case of disruption like an earthquake, you should put certain alternate sites For example, at least 40 kilometers apart. So in case the disrupted location will not be highly affected in a certain distance. So I need to focus that I have to put maximum geographic extent, for example, in order that these solutions can effectively respond to the disruptions. Or I can put a partial failure solution in order when I create this recovery strategies in order to be adaptable only to partial failure, not consider a whole fire in the head office, for example, but only in a certain floor, and it can be mitigated immediately. So just to disrupt certain units or certain branches, for example, and not spread to the whole business. Then you need to focus on the service level. Usually, solutions in the first critical moments are provided only for the minimum level of service that is acceptable to achieve as a minimum immediate obligation to clients or to staff. And then you go on step by step by providing all the necessary requirements to continue your activities and to go as business as usual. The possible solutions include, as for the good practices solutions, diversification, replication, standby, and post-incident acquisitions. Usually, the diversification is where you have separate activities and resources and running live activities at 2 or more locations, so that in the event of disruptions, the secondary site can become active directly if the primary location is disrupted or is incapable of keeping up the business. The ideal part of this diversification is that you have all the people working in separate locations and undertaking the same activity. You have, for example, for information systems, you have 2 copies of the system and the data in the separate location, and these two like 2 servers are kept synchronized and are both live. It's highly costly to implement this kind of solutions, but as for the post let's say the first days after declaring the pandemic, all these financial institutions went usually all live. So you work on remote locations, usually from home, and it worked quite well for a lot of institutions. And that was a type of diversification in order to not have a lot of people all together in your offices in order to mitigate the spread of infections or any other regulatory requirements from health authorities. So this is the diversification of premises and activities. Meanwhile, considering the replication and the standby, these are kind of a variation of the diversification. The replicated site is maintained at a high state of readiness with all the required resources in place. It does not become active until it is required to take over any disruptive activity. But it can have all the possible equipments within it, which can be rapidly made live. It has information system that can be operative, synchronized periodically with the live version, but needs switching to be made live. Usually, a lot of banks, a lot of financial institutions rely on these two parts of recovery strategy, replication and standby. These are most effective when not for example, for the pandemic, but for certain natural disaster, if they are separated and they are quite a little bit in a distance from the disrupted area. So you could provide certain certain branches to replicate the activity done in the head offices. So in case of disruption in the head office, if there is any fire or any flooding or any anything else that might have obstructed access to the buildings, for example, you can replicate your activity with certain departments or certain people, which we are going to discuss later on with the BCPs for each unit. You replicate these activities in a short period of time at your branches, which may be at the periphery of your city or somewhere else in another city. So you can put pre-configured computers, users, and anything like that, and you can make them live directly only by switching users to the computers or by having certain help from the IT support teams. And these alternative facilities do come active directly with the minimum efforts. Also, depending on the new units or processes that come up during your activity, you can also, with the minimum effort, you can provide new facilities, new computers, and replace everything needed to this separate location to be made operational. Meanwhile, considering the last part, let's say solution, possible solution, would be the post-incident acquisitions. Usually what happened in March and April of 2020, all financial institutions usually actually needed to provide the remote working from home activities. They needed laptops, so they had to procure a lot of laptops for the essential and the key stuff in order to perform the activities, because usually for cybersecurity or information security issues, a lot of financial institutions didn't provide or didn't let a lot of people have their data or anything that could be related to the network, to the intranet of the institution in laptops due to security issues. So it was quite necessary to provide a lot of people with laptops, and then you had the IT teams which needed to provide all the say systems and networks in order to get connected to your primary computer in the offices and to switch to the remote working part. So in this kind of post-incident acquisition, you can also acquire different premises from other businesses. For example, if you have any hotel nearby, you can take their conference meeting rooms and you can switch to your needs. And or you can hire other personnel from different banks or other internal companies within the group to perform your actual functions and processes. For the information and communication system and data, you can have backup copies of the system and its data that need to be installed, and also equipment that might be acquired after the incident. And depending on type of tools that you already have, you will figure out what are going to be the costs for buying them and the time that you can provide this kind of equipment. Here we are going to show a summary example of, let's say, any kind of strategy ranked by its level of importance. For considering, for example, a certain worst case scenario, I need to have a recovery objective, or RTO, for example, less than 4 hours. I will need a required staff, for example, 5 people. For a certain unit, I need at the beginning, I need the security team, I need the IT team, I need someone from finance, for example, or for marketing. And I need 5 people. One, for example, would be the one who monitors security cameras. I need all the facilities, equipment, computers, telephones, anything necessary to provide to this key staff that will come within the 4 hours after the disruptions. And then the necessary applications. I will need for these people the core system of the institution, if it's financial institutions, and the camera monitoring applications in order to provide security for the old staff and all the premises of the business. Also, I can provide the approved recovery strategies where it was considered to suspend the activities in certain branches and to have pre-configured work posts, as previously mentioned. This could be, for example, if you have this fire issues, earthquakes, or certain approaches regarding natural disasters, but also anything else that might consider as riot or civil disorders. And then I focus on the additional workspaces that I need to provide. Also, we in this document of the strategy, I need to put all the costs regarding the financial part, the reputational part, regulatory requirements, in order to have all the information needed to implement the necessary solutions provided for this kind of strategy and this kind of worst case scenarios that I have provided. So in order to let's say execute this recovery strategy solutions and options provided, I need to develop certain plans which are will monitor the development of response plans, create policies and procedure, and set standards to all the business units and its facilities. So in order to have an effective implementation of these plans, the institution should have the ability to recognize and assess all the potential threats when they occur and to determine the appropriate response, which should be in place for the activation, the escalation, and the controls. I need to include in the plans all the staff which have the authority and the competency to implement the grid solution and all the measures needed. I will have to find the ability and to communicate effectively between internal and external parties. So for the acquirement of resources, I need to previously consider all possible furnitures and the necessary cost to have in a certain time period all the necessary equipments or facilities needed to perform the activities as those that are most critical. So the plans are used in high pressure, time limited situations. These plans should be very focused, specific, and very easy to use. They should provide clear and should be action oriented, and they should provide quick access to vital information. They should be adaptable to respond to a wide range of incidents. They need to contain guidance, information, all the tools necessary to be used by the teams. Anything else might be unnecessary to include in these plans. And the plans should be kept up to date and documented in a certain way that you allow all your staff to quickly access the relevant information. The plans should be held in known and secure locations, accessible to all team members. Usually, the institution do have electronically copies of this plans, and then you should make available even in hard copies. And starting considering the development of the plan, you have the prevention part, where is kind of business as usual, and you start your planning of a possible crisis before the emergence of any threats or events. And you consider the response and the reaction to these events, and then the recovery and the storage. This is a circle in order to improve and to change all the necessary steps that you have in your planning due to your lesson learned from any kind of disruptions, as the pandemic was. You now have a lot of kind of solutions that you have regarding the possible measures that you take if you have any new wave of infections. And I think all of financial institutions are handling this last year. We're handling very good the pandemic, even from working from remote, but also being prepared for having all their staff within their premises and their offices. So, in order to develop this crisis management, you can start by providing an emergency response plan. These emergency responses can be held within, for example, the security units or IT units, or you can put it in the overall strategic plan that you have for business continuity. These plans are procedures that address the initial reaction to activities to ensure that the first step is the safety of all personnel, and then you work with emergency personnel to minimize and to contain the possible effects of the disruption. When you go on a different type of event, or the incident has a huge impact or a serious impact on the activity, you start activating the crisis management plan, which are procedures to be followed when you have this declaration of a crisis. You address the roles and responsibility around specific incidents and the coordination of the decision and communication throughout the event. When you start these emergency response or crisis management plans, you need to figure out the stuff and all the equipment that you need to create the possible environment that will be required to have all the information available and to respond with the adequate decision to be made by all the staff. So you create some crisis management teams which are providing the guidelines, the direction, and the possible solutions to be taken in a disruption. The leaders of these crisis management teams should be the management. So you have your team leader, and then you might have units from security teams, IT teams, ISO, or you can have, especially for example for marketing, for the communication part, risk teams, and you can have finance and network. So you need to have in the room, when you're going to make the appropriate decision, all the personnel that has the authorities and the capabilities to provide direct and rapid responses to all the information regarding the disruption. So this response structure will have certain roles for the team mobilization, the procedure escalation, the plan activization, command and control, and they're going to change their priorities as the situation might evolve. Considering building these crisis management plans, we can start by writing down the detection and communication part. So you put there that it's a duty and it's a responsibility to all the staff to identify and to report all the unusual and unwanted events. So usually these incidents are notified or are detected by your staff, or they can be detected by the clients or third parties. Possibly, if you might have a website hacking or cybersecurity or any fraud from cards, possibly the clients will notify the financial institution regarding any trouble that they are experiencing, and then this escalates, and it should be reported to all the monitoring and control units that should be directly involved. So you have the response to these emergencies. The initial reaction, as mentioned before, was to protect life and safety of all your people, your employees, your clients, and all possible persons that are within or nearby the premises of the business. You might have dedicated staff that will assess the event and then will inform the authorities about the situation. As mentioned before, you might have a response emergency plan as type of evacuation plan. If you have any fire, if you have any earthquake and anything like that, you activate your evacuation plan for your facilities, for your headquarters, your branches, and whatever kind of premises you are working within. So you need your security team to alert with the speakers that the institution should have in place, or the fire alarm system. And then you have this kind of floor personnel that direct your staff throughout the emergency exits. And then you should detail all the necessary steps that you have in your mind to be implemented during these emergencies. And depending on the nature of the emergency, you escalate the details of the situation to your crisis team to obtain the guidance and the possible decisions on any actions needed. When you have any kind of, as mentioned before, any evacuation activization, your staff should wait for signals and instructions from the security units at your gathering points. When you find out that you will have a certain gathering points of all your headquarters, your branches, in order to provide safety from the offices or the disruptions, any riot that might happen with nearby your offices, you might dislocate to another place where you have decided to be the gathering point. As mentioned before, the people well-being is mostly the crucial part of your response. And then, depending on the situation, you can discuss even arranging transport assistance that will be necessary in order to provide safe transportation and safe dislocation all of your staff. We have I've been following, for example, Raiffeisen International with its staff in Ukraine. They already did this kind of arrangements for all their staff that were evacuating from the war zones, and they provided all the necessary tools and assistance in order to dislocate to other cities in the west of the country or at other nearby countries, and providing all necessary shelters, and also possibly keeping up their work remotely. So providing all the necessary assistance to their staff. And it was kind of a very important thing to do. And all the necessary facilities were provided for their staff and their families. Then, as next steps, once you have in control the initial emergency, your incident teams and unit will assess the damage caused. For example, you focus on damages, the security teams, the procurement or asset management teams, the IT teams, which one will be first in the place where the disruption happened. Human resources teams, they assess the damage. If it's a damage, for example, for the power center, for the electricity, for the data center where the servers, or if it's premises in a certain floor at the headquarters or at a certain branch of the financial institution, whoever comes first will report and will have a certain template, clear and very user-friendly template in order to fulfill all the necessary steps. If you have any disruption due to your communication channels, to your network, to your any obstruction to your access to buildings or to offices, so you put their checklist very detailed on all the necessary facilities. If you have any casualties in people, anything like that, or you have a cyber security attack or any ransomware, you put a list and you report this information to the coordinator and to the management as per the escalation criteria that will be determined in this crisis management plan. You determine the impact of the incident on all of your operation activities, processes, functions over time. You define the scale of the existing or potential damages, and then you put a certain recommendation for classifying this incident as a crisis, or you go on and follow the procedure for the resolution of the incident. It's very important that these plans should have the appropriate documentation and circumstances where the plan should be activated and the crisis management team should be mobilized. You should put very clearly and to state which members have the authority to declare crisis and mobilization. As mentioned before, the crisis management teams usually is led by the key senior management, but whoever comes first in the premises and starts receiving this information about the incident can be responsible even for the activization of the plans. So it should be very adaptable in order to perform the best practices and possible to be very rapid in giving the solutions and deciding the actions to be taken. The crisis management team should activate when it considered as a crisis the appropriate business continuity plans and also escalate these plans to all the individual business processes, units, and they should coordinate all the recovery activities in relation to this continuity management for all the affected business functions. As mentioned before, when you classify your incident, you might provide all the security teams, IT teams, in order to contain and to remediate the incident. You have your communication teams. We're going to discuss later about the communication plans with the media, staff, clients, in order to focus especially on clients and partners to gain trust. And then you communicate with your authorities in order to have an investigation and all the necessary steps to assess the potential disruption that happened. Also, once the crisis is activated, possibly, especially for large corporates, you might have in need to provide a crisis command center where it might be located at headquarters, but also depending on circumstances, you can have it wherever would be possible to meet and to direct the crisis activities. So in order to facilitate this activity, you should have certain dedicated equipments for this crisis command center. You need to have all the telephones, cameras, communication channels, any kind of like a strategic war room where you decide everything and you have all the plans in place and you go on and discuss all the solutions. This data center, especially for certain types of financial institutions, especially big banks, should have physical and information security in place in order not to disrupt any certain or to leak any information to the outside doors. Also, this crisis management team should have in place a really good support team. And by support team, I don't mean someone that is responsible for the administrative part, kind of providing information and putting on cameras and everything like that. But this support team, with working with the coordinator of the business continuity plans, will need to focus on just giving on the reports, brief reports, all the informations, all the solutions that will be provided by the team, and to transmit and to be part of gathering of information and also assessing all the information and also identifying all the potential damages and disruptions that might be created during this recovery and restoring activities. So this is mostly the crucial part of the support to this to the management and to high crisis management members. Usually, when you decide to activate or not the crisis and to put it as for public domain, this will depend, especially for the for management. But usually, as experience shows, words come out, and you already will be in need to have a public statement regarding what is happening to your institution. Also, the next phase of the document regarding the steps for crisis management will be the deactivation of the crisis. It's a focal part because you need to have a stand-down procedure that will be implemented to all the levels of the business and leading to formal declaration that the incident has ended. As you start to recover from the incident and to resume operation, the disruption level or impact thresholds used before can also be used to decide when to declare the incident as resolved. Once the operation have resumed, even considering that they are at a lower capacity, the crisis can be considered as over. But as long as the business continuity teams need assistance, the crisis management team is not deactivated. So you need to be very clear what are the steps that you need to put there in order to consider the event as closed and the incident as closed and for the deactivation of the plan. Once that the crisis is over, you need to evaluate and to do certain post-crisis valuations where you have to reconstruct the events and the chronology of the incident. You should have a certain detailed template as a checklist where you identify the root cause, what happened, what was the cause. You examine the functions, the processes, the system issues that have contributed to this problem. And then you recommend, or the damage that you were affected to the business due to the part of the problems. Then you recommend regarding this valuation process improvement or actions that should be preventing or mitigating future occurrences of the incident. You review all your emergency reactions and crisis responses from lessons learned, and then you update the possible plans from these valuations. What is very focal in the crisis management plan is the communication plan. As mentioned before, these plans can be part of the marketing unit, or can be included in certain, let's say, management issues, or be considered just for the strategic plan for the business continuity. What is very important for these communication plans is that they should respond to during a crisis or incident, and they are usually guided by the top management in collaboration with specialists for communication, for example, for marketing. And there you manage communication with internal and external interested parties. You identify these parties, you record all their contact details, and possibly you can also define the communication requirements and their expectations. You define all the available methods and channels for the communication with each party as for social media, for emails, messages, you're also with newspapers or radio, anything that would be possibly to reach your clients or your groups of interest. And then you identify and specify directly in the plan the groups or the individual of your institution who has the responsibility, the authority, and the technical knowledge to deliver these communications via all these available methods and channels. Usually it's the marketing managers that should be delegated this role, but also the senior management can achieve. Usually, during these disruptions, I will also keep up with the Replication International in Ukraine. I've seen their head chairman of the board giving statements regarding the situation and and the measures taken. So it was considered as most what I have experienced, even in a certain disruption that our bank has had in the past. Our board members did this statement to ensure all the public and all the necessary interested parties about what was happening and the contingency plans that were taken by the bank in order to mitigate and smoothly get out of these situations. What we experienced last year, for example, in one of the banks in my country, they had a IT disruption, and from the outside, as a client or as someone that is not related to this bank, I had this kind of perceptions that they weren't very rapid in order to communicate what was happening with their bank, and they had some kind of negative opinions, especially from the in social media, where everybody was complaining about the bank, and this disruption of their IT systems, where they couldn't provide in a certain period of time. I don't recall, it was less than one working day, but it was split in 2 days. Actually, they had disruption, let's say at lunch time, and then they recovered in the morning of the next day, where they weren't possible to do transactions or any kind of operations in their with their system and their branches. And this was kind of a catalyst for expressing all the evaluations that people had about this bank, and usually was for negative part. Even though the bank were trying to keep up with these social media messages and posts or tweets, it was kind of perceived as a negative impact that they were having due to these disruptions, and they weren't quite swift in their declaration about the situation, and it escalated also in certain media articles giving some non-real facts about the situation, and was attempting to even consider that it was a cyber attack threat or a ransomware, which the bank actually in their statement denied, and it was just kind of IT disruptions, and it was let's say in more than 8 hours it was recovered and all the application were restored. But this is kind of a situation that reminds you of any possible incident that might happen, and you need to focus on your communication and liaison with all interested party. So for emergency notification, usually you have to notify and you have to make media communications regarding your situation and publish possibly every new statement as soon as possible and when the information becomes available. What I'm following with Replication International in Ukraine, they are giving daily updates about the situation. They are considering every day how the bank will operate, what branches or what regions will be closed, depending on the escalation of the conflict, uh, what kind of operations are available. Uh, you cannot do purchases of foreign exchange currency, but you can do withdrawals. You can withdraw money uh, outside the facilities of or outside the ATMs. For example, in certain supermarkets or any facilities or any business that they have relation, you can rely on their uh, e-banking network. So they're giving detailed uh, information about how they operate and what their clients can do and what they cannot do. Regarding also the national bank restrictions and considering that they are under martial law. So what is available to them and what is available also to their clients and to their staff. And it's quite impressive, their handling of the situation. So it's kind of a solution you can do in order to, I haven't seen this done by another European bank that operates in Ukraine right now. But I've seen this actually in certain banks, European banks, operating in Russia, in Moscow. So it's quite important to have direct communication with all medias and clients and all, especially with your staff. So we're going to continue with the business continuity plans. It's our last part, and we'll be quite rapid about this part because I think we have extended our time limit. The business continuity plans are a set of documented procedure to enable the business area to respond to potential disaster events and to recover within a predetermined time frame. These plans should be organized, coordinated, and consolidated in order to manage your response, your recovery activities, in order to avoid any type of confusion and to reduce exposure to error. As mentioned before, they should be direct, they should give just a swift guidance about what you need to do, what are the steps you need to follow, what are your roles and your responsibilities, and then you have a prompt and appropriate response to this incident, reducing the possible impacts and increasing the ability of the business and its operational resilience to all possible disruptions. These plans are developed with the holistic approach, which focuses on addressing response from a variety of outages types, loss of assets, people, buildings, equipment, technology, and whatever needed to be provided. So the plans will be based regarding the solution provided in these strategies and the identified resources during the analysis phase. They should include also outside of the business function, they should include even units that manage the organization infrastructure, ICT services, and also support services. They should have appointed representative within each business unit to develop the plan. Usually you can have the manager of the business function, or you can have, for example, for the risk operational reporting, is someone delegated in order to report. This might be also the person in charge for developing their own plans, and you should use plan templates which are very standardized uh, documents, but also they can allow for variations or changes where this might be considered appropriate. Um, you should ensure that the business unit nominate the uh, key emergence personnel or individuals which need to fulfill all the key roles within their plan. And these draft plans will be consulted also with the members of each unit for reviews and the feedbacks. Uh, Actually, what is included within these documents? They have a huge amount of information, but this amount of information should be very concise and should be very clear to and friendly used. So you need to focus. For example, if I have a business continuity plan for the treasury function, I see there that I need the human resources and how many people are there. If I have a unit that has 20 people working there, as for the initial crisis, I need just 3 or 4 people. One could be the manager, one could be one operating for the money market activities, one the chief dealer for foreign exchange, and any back office. So I need just these 3 people. I need to have the access to and the use of facilities listed. Then all the processes that this unit will perform during the first 2 or 4 hours, and then escalate to first day, up to 3 days, up to 5 weeks. And this will be listed in order of priority. I need the manager to handle all the placement with, let's say, correspondent banks. This is the first priority. Depending on your institution, you might have a list of priorities for any type of processes. So you focus on any kind of liaison that you have with your ICT service continuity teams, any external third-party support. If the treasury uses Reuters, uses Swift, uses Bloomberg applications, or any kind of clearing application with the central bank, you need to provide and have all this information about these key interested parties, contacts, numbers, in order to immediately contact them and for any kind of possible disruption that you have. You put there the evacuation and shelter-in-place procedures and methods to contact team members, personnel, what is going to be included in these communications, all the spaces, all the part of the computers, applications, software requirements, and then you decide to activate the business continuity plans. Once it's activated, the crisis management team notifies the manager of the business functions, and they receive notification and special responsibilities for mobilizing their units and their equipment in the selected alternative locations. For example, this treasury function can be dislocated to another area or can move swiftly from the premises where the disruption has occurred, moving outside the city or somewhere else, or even going home working remotely. But these 4 people will be active within the 4 hours from this incident. So you notify your unit employees and what is going on, what is happening, and then you confirm any possible travel opportunities to the specified locations. From the crisis management team, you obtain your guidance on information which will be provided to your staff, to your customer partners and third parties about the disruptions and the possibility when these operations can resume. For example, if I have to if I have to discuss with a correspondent bank, I need to give a certain amount of information, and it should be provided, guided by the teams. What is this information and how much you can expose your institution to what is going on. So once you arrive at your alternate location or somewhere that you can start your activities, you see your restoration working environment. As mentioned before, if you have any kind of let's say a part of offices where the alternate location is, you see the workspace for your staff. You see all the requirements for any additional equipment that will be needed, and then you assess the information system and the facilities. You confirm, the staff will confirm that all the communication tools are functioning. I need to use my telephone with my clients. If I'm a chip dealer, FX chip dealer, I need to communicate with my clients, with my branches, and also with anyone that I do business. I need to see all the applications needed. For example, I need Reuters, I need Swift to do my transactions, I need Bloomberg to keep up with the fixed income market or FX crosses. So I verify the activation, the operation, and the integrity of all application systems. So you put a checklist for all these steps that your staff should follow and verify their availability. Then you confirm the access to all areas of all the systems you provide, where you consider that the data is actually accessible and is it reliable. Also, you see your RPO, where it was, how much data might have been lost, if any data is lost, and you have your IT team support to focus on recovering this data or transaction that might have been lost. Once you verify all your facilities, equipments, and all your workspace is activated, you recover your business function. You start operating under almost normal operating conditions. All interdependencies of business and technology should be restarted and should be restored. Notices for data validation and their manual adjustment will be provided as information to the crisis management team, and you provide a time frame for the recovery of your operations. And these reports will go directly to, depending on which kind of business processes, business unit you are recovering right now in the first 2 hours, 4 hours, 8 hours. And then all the other part of your staff will be available at the second moment with the possible escalation of the incidents, or with the mitigation of the incident. And you can put them on, for example, one of the solutions would be on administrative leave, or just stay within at the surrounding of these alternative locations, or at home, and preparing to get live with their computers or anything that should help them performing their operations. Once the business functions are resumed at the main locations or at the alternative locations, and you close your incident event, The resources might be transferred, repaired, and returned to the site to resume full business operations. And then you list all these steps in your business continuity plan with all the necessary people performing them and the time frame to implement each of these steps. And then you follow up discussing, as mentioned before, valuations about all the steps that you have performed. This is kind of examples about this business continuity plans, but it can be very different depending on your business or your dimension of a certain financial institution or microfinance or banks or whatever your business is. So I don't know how we are with the time. I think we can finish our
Yes, we
stuff.
actually almost half of hour over the time. So
so if there is any person, because I didn't put a lot of word.
We didn't get any question on chat so far, so I suggest we can just wrap it up now. And for the next and the last webinar planned on this session in April, we will extend the original time to 1.5 hours because it seems that there's a lot of content to deliver. And we thank you for all of you who stayed with us. But I think we need to wrap it up. So anything else to add from your side, Artan?
No, actually, I think we covered all the necessary steps and necessary tools, for example, to create and to develop this kind of plans or strategies. And hope at the next webinar we're going to discuss on anything needed about the management and maintenance of these plans, and then the real exercises that could be performed during this testing or any kind of approach that business might have to, let's say, improve or to implement what is actually written down in documents. If there is anything else, I have finished this second presentation.
Okay, thank you very much, Artan. Thank you a lot once again. It was a lot of very useful and important content for our participants. So as I mentioned, the next webinar will be planned from the very beginning to be more than 1 hour. So to avoid this unexpected extension, I will send to all participants who took part in the webinar, I will send them an email with the link to the evaluation form. So just please spare a minute of your time to provide us your feedback. And the recording will soon be available on our website, as I mentioned at the very beginning. So thank you a lot. Again, thank you, Artan. Thank you, all the participants, and see you on the next part.
Thank you. Thank you.